This is a Prime Minister that can pay £7,000 a day for consultants on track and trace, which isn't working, that can find £43 million for a garden bridge that was never built, but he can't find £5 million for the people of Greater Manchester. I really think the Prime Minister's crossed a Rubicon here, not just with the miserly way that he's treated Greater Manchester, but the grub-it, take-it-or-leave-it way these local deals are being done. It's corrosive to public trust to pit region against region, mayor against mayor, council against council, asking them to trade away their businesses and jobs. We need a one-nation approach. Replace these endless local battles with clear national criteria and proper support for jobs. Labour's motion this afternoon would do that. Why won't the Prime Minister support it?
Mr. Speaker, I'm proud of the support that we've given, the one nation Conservative support that we've given to the entire country. £200 billion in support for jobs and livelihoods across the whole of the country already. A further £9.9 billion now for the Jobs Support Scheme. It is this government that has cut VAT for business, deferred business rates. There is no other country in Europe, Mr. Speaker, where so much support, so much help has been given to the population to get through this crisis, and we will continue to do that. But I think it is the height of absurdity, Mr. Speaker, that he stands up and attacks the economic consequences of the measures that we're obliged to take across some parts of the country when he wants to turn the lights out with a full national lockdown, taking kids... That was his policy last week anyway, wasn't it? Perhaps he could confirm that's still his policy. Is that what he wants to do?
Here's Starmer. Mr. Speaker, at his press conference yesterday, the Prime Minister produced heat maps across the country showing the infection rate up in all ages across all regions, and particularly showing regions that have been in the equivalent of Tier 2 restrictions for weeks, if not months, moving into Tier 3. Now, if they're moving into Tier 3, Tier 2 hasn't worked, because if Tier 2 worked, they should be going to Tier 1. So Tier 2 goes to Tier 3, Tier 3 has no end, because there's no prospect or confidence in the R rate coming below 1. And I do not believe that a Tier 3 region will come out of those restrictions unless R is below 1 and whilst numbers are still going up. So we now have a stark choice. And by the way, Prime Minister, Cornwall is the only place, possibly with the Isle of Wight, where the infection rate today is less than Greater Manchester when it went into local restrictions. So this idea that some areas are immune is wrong. So there's a stark choice. Carry on with the Prime Minister's approach, which will lead to weeks and weeks and months of prolonged agony in all your constituencies for millions of people in Tier 2 and 3 with no exit, or put in place a 2 to 3 week time-limited circuit break to break the cycle and bring the virus back under control. Wales, Northern Ireland and Scotland in part have chosen that path. With half-term starting this Friday, this may be the last opportunity for the Prime Minister to put in place an effective circuit break. The Prime Minister was too slow in the first phase of this pandemic. He's being too slow again. We cannot repeat this mistake. Will he act in the public interest and take the opportunity to put in place a circuit break this Friday?
Mr. Speaker, we will do whatever it takes to get this country through the crisis, with or without the support of the right honourable gentleman opposite. And I may say that I think that his policy, I've explained why I don't believe that his policy is the right one for the country, because it would involve closing schools, it would involve shuttering businesses, with all the psychological, the emotional damage that lockdown of that kind brings. He can't say how many circuit breakers he thinks would be necessary. He can't say how long they would go on. He can't say how much damage they would do to the UK economy and to people's mental health, Mr. Speaker. We, on the other hand, want to go on with our commonsensical approach, which is a local and a regional approach, keeping kids in school, keeping our economy moving, because that is the way to get the whole of our country through this crisis together, so that we all, and particularly those regions that are now, alas, under Tier 3 restrictions, all the regions of the country bounce back strongly together, Mr. Speaker.
Yeah. Let's head up to Cheshire with Edward Timpson. Edward Timpson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. After recent positive progress, COVID has disproportionately and adversely affected participation levels in female sport and physical activity. So to help reverse this, will my right honourable friend lend his support to the development of the first ever Women's and Girls Football National Centre of Excellence in Winsford in my constituency, a £70 million project that he has previously expressed enthusiasm for, and help build female grassroots sport back better?
Well, I thank my honourable friend, and this is a very exciting project. I welcome Cheshire FA's commitment to providing a new world-class facility for women and girls football, and I look forward to the proposed opening of the centre in Winsford.
We're now heading to the leader of the SNP, Ian Blackford. Audio only. Ian Blackford.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and my thoughts are very much with the member for Bolton South East. I hope she makes a speedy recovery. Mr. Speaker, next week, just as the pandemic is worsening, the Tory government will scrap the furlough scheme in a move that will cause a wave of mass redundancies across the United Kingdom. Meanwhile, behind closed doors, the Prime Minister is complaining that he can't get by on his £150,000 salary. So can I ask the Prime Minister, if he's finding life such a struggle, how on earth does he expect many workers to get by on just £5.84 an hour when the Tory cuts to furlough sink in?
Mr. Speaker, actually, I'm proud of what we've done to support people on low incomes throughout this period, and indeed before. It was this government that raised the living wage by record amounts. We've just increased universal credit by about £1,000 a year, and he makes the point about furlough, Mr. Speaker, and as he knows, combine the universal credit with job support, the job support scheme that we've just announced, and workers will be getting 80% of their existing salary. We will get this country through this crisis, and we will continue to support people of low incomes throughout the period.
Turning to Ian Blackford. Ian Blackford.
Mr. Speaker, I'm afraid the Prime Minister just simply doesn't get it. Yesterday we saw his total disregard for the people of Greater Manchester, a Tory attitude that people in Scotland are all too familiar with. Millions of families are struggling to get by, and this Tory government wants to cut their incomes in the middle of a pandemic. It is clear that the Prime Minister has made a deliberate decision to let unemployment soar, just like Thatcher did in the 1980s. Time is running out. With 1 week left, will the Prime Minister finally U-turn on his cuts to the furlough scheme and invest in our communities, or will he leave millions of people on the scrap heap?
Mr. Speaker, I really must reject what the right honourable gentleman has just said, because it bears no relation to the facts or the reality of what this government is doing to support people across the country. And it's not just the £200 billion investment in jobs and livelihoods. What we also are engaged in, and what we will continue to deliver, is a colossal investment in education, in health, in housing, in infrastructure, that will deliver jobs and growth throughout this United Kingdom for a generation, Mr. Speaker.
Andrew Jenkins.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Firstly, I congratulate the Prime Minister and negotiating team for their strong stance in negotiations with the EU, and ask the Prime Minister whether he agrees with me that the EU's position on fishing and ECJ demonstrate they are not treating us as an independent state, they are not acting in good faith to deliver a free trade agreement, and in international law, the UK is therefore entitled to leave the withdrawal agreement and make its own arrangements regarding the UK's own internal market.
Well, Mr. Speaker, whatever the effect of the withdrawal agreement, I can certainly assure her that the UK's internal market, which I think everybody on both sides of the House values, is protected and upheld by the UK Internal Market Bill, which is going through another place at the moment, and also, of course, protecting the Good Friday Agreement.
Ed Davey.
Mr. Speaker, Mikey is severely disabled. He turned 18 last month, so he's one of the first to see his child trust fund mature. But Mikey's disabilities mean he can't manage his own finances, so he can't access these savings. Government rules on child trust fund mean his parents can't either, without paying expensive legal fees. This is Mikey's own money. He wants to use it to buy a specially adapted tricycle. So will the Prime Minister look at proposals that Mikey's father has shown me to end this injustice for disabled young people and let Mikey buy this trike?
Of course, Mr. Speaker, I will do whatever I can to help in the particular case that he raises. I don't know whether the tricycle he mentions is eligible for a number of the schemes that I can immediately call to mind, but if he cares to write to me, I will of course answer immediately.
Heading up to Harrow for Bob Blackman to land this question. Bob Blackman.
Thank you, Ground Control. My right honourable friend will be well aware of the negotiations going on between the Department for Transport and the current Mayor of London on a further bailout for Transport for London. The current Mayor is demanding an eye-watering £5.65 billion to keep TfL running for the next 18 months, yet he refuses to accept any economies because of offending his union paymasters. Can my right honourable friend confirm, however, that the government has not required the current Mayor of London to expand the congestion charge to the North and South Circular Roads?
Mr. Speaker, well, I can certainly confirm, as I said in my answer to the first question, is that the black hole in TfL's finances, the bankruptcy of TfL, which was left, by the way, in robust financial health by the previous mayor, Mr. Speaker, it certainly was, is entirely the fault of the current Labour Mayor of London, with his grossly irresponsible demagogic fare policies, which were never pursued by the previous Mayor of London, I may say, Mr. Speaker, and the fault lies entirely, therefore, with him, and I trust my honourable friend will make that clear.
Dr. Rupert.
Mr. Speaker, financial support packages, tackling homelessness, rail nationalisation, honouring Marcus Rashford. There's plenty this government's done on COVID that I applaud. But with winter set to bite and no end to the virus in sight, can I ask the PM to reconsider the arbitrary end to many of his schemes set months ago when we knew so little? 3 million self-employed were completely out of all of these, and a number of them set to face destitution when the minimum income floor ends next month, and 3,272 kids in his own seat, 2016 in mind. School dinners are in the balance. Can he start by voting with us tonight and make sure that that gong doesn't just mean nothing?
Sorry, Prime Minister. Prime Minister, can you just sit down? Please, we've got to have short questions. I want to get through the list. We've got to help each other. Prime Minister.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And the honourable lady is quite right to call attention to the difficulties facing many families right now because of the crisis that we've been in. But the most important thing, and I think this is, I hope, common ground, actually, is to keep kids in school if we possibly can. That would be vitiated by the series of lockdowns that are being proposed. I don't want to go down that route, and what I want to do is to make sure that we continue to support families throughout the crisis so that they have the cash available to feed their kids as they need to do.
On to your question, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm delighted that Kettering General Hospital is part of the biggest hospital building programme in a generation. I can tell my honourable friend the Infrastructure Delivery Task Force is already involved in delivering the health infrastructure programme, which includes Kettering General Hospital.
Thank the Prime Minister for visiting the night shift at Kettering General Hospital in February and seeing for himself at first hand the wonderful work being done by local medics and staff. The hospital can expedite at speed ambitious plans for its rebuild, but only if the time taken for regulatory clearances at NHS improvement are dramatically shortened. Will the Prime Minister cut NHS red tape so local people can have the improvements we need at our local hospital as quickly as possible?
Indeed, Mr. Speaker, and I hope I can reassure him by saying that clinical